Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the core arguments from a pretty fascinating and, let's be honest, often controversial book, Gary Wilson's Your Brain on Porn. We're going to unpack its key claims. So let's get right into it.
The whole argument of the book really boils down to this one powerful question. The central idea isn't about morality, it's about biology. It's about a potential mismatch between the brain we evolved with over millennia and the supercharged, always-on technology of the 21st century.
So where does this supposed conflict actually show up? Well, the book points to some really startling statistics. Get ready for this number, 1,000%. According to data cited in the book, that's how much erectile dysfunction rates went up in men under 40 over just 15 years. That's such a massive jump that it got medical professionals looking for completely new explanations.
Okay, so let's start with the what of this puzzle. The book lays out how a new kind of pornography seemed to bring with it a whole new set of problems, all of which were reported by the users themselves.
To really get the argument, you have to look at how the technology itself changed. I mean, it went from static magazines that you had to work to get, to video rentals, then to slow, clunky dial-up internet. But the real game changer, the book argues, was around 2006. The arrival of high-speed internet and these tube sites, that's when everything changed. We went from a limited, finite supply to an infinite, free, streaming fire hose of hardcore clips. And listen, this quote from a user cited in the book, it just nails that shift perfectly. It highlights this feeling that the new delivery method wasn't just more of the same old thing. It felt qualitatively different. For some people, way more compelling. So right alongside this new tech, you had this wave of really strange problems popping up in online forums. Thousands of users, many of them really young, started talking about things like unreliable erections, losing attraction to their actual partners, finding themselves escalating to more and more extreme material, and even non-sexual stuff like sudden social anxiety or brain fog. And they all started to connect the dots back to their high-speed internet porn use. Okay, so that's the what. Now let's dig into the why, how the book tries to explain this from a brain science perspective. And the main idea it uses actually comes from evolutionary biology. It's a concept called a supernormal stimulus. Basically, it's an artificial, exaggerated version of something natural that triggers an over-the-top response. Think about it like this. There's this bird, right? And it'll totally ignore its own small, pale eggs to try and sit on a giant, brightly colored fake egg. Why? Because the fake one is so stimulating, it literally hijacks the bird's instincts. So how does this apply to us? Well, a natural sexual stimulus is, it's complex. It involves a real partner, courtship, touch, scent, real emotion. The book's argument is that internet porn acts as a supernormal stimulus. It's an endless parade of new partners, extreme scenarios, and perfect bodies, all instantly available. It's a supersized, totally unrealistic version of the cues our brains evolved to respond to. And this has a huge effect on our brain chemistry, especially a little neurochemical called dopamine that drives our motivation. Normally, your dopamine response drops off when you see the same old thing again. But here's the kicker. The book argues that the endless novelty of these websites just keeps smacking that dopamine button over and over, keeping it jacked up for way longer than is natural. And this whole idea of constantly high dopamine, well, that's the jumping off point for the next part of the argument, a proposed model for addiction that's based on 4 core changes that happen in the brain. All right, let's walk through these. First, you get sensitization. This is the wanting part of your brain getting supercharged. Cues trigger these powerful, almost irresistible cravings. Second, desensitization. This is the liking part getting weaker. You need more and more intense stuff to get the same effect, and everyday pleasures just seem kind of meh. Third, hypofrontality. Think of this as your brain's CEO, the rational part, having a harder time saying no to impulses. And finally, a malfunctioning stress system that goes haywire, making cravings even stronger and fueling withdrawal. So what you get is this bizarre, vicious cycle of intense wanting combined with less and less actual liking or satisfaction. A user from the book captured this paradox perfectly with this quote. This feeling, This wanting more while liking it less is the absolute heart of the addiction model the book presents.
So, faced with this cycle, what did people actually do? We've covered the what and the why, now for the how. Users started this amazing grassroots community-led experiment that they themselves called rebooting.
The term rebooting? Yeah, the users came up with that themselves. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. A period of complete abstinence from internet porn and other kinds of artificial sexual stimulation. The whole idea was to just cut out the stimulus completely, track what happened, and see if the brain's reward system could, hit the reset button.
But whoa, the process was not a walk in the park. In fact, many people reported this really surprising and, frankly, pretty distressing withdrawal symptom they nicknamed the flat line. As this user describes, it's this temporary but total loss of libido. The book points out that if people weren't warned about this, they'd freak out thinking they had broken themselves for good. So who were these people trying this rebooting thing anyway? Well, a user poll from a big online forum cited in the book is pretty telling. Look at this. Reversing sexual dysfunction was the #1 reason, by a mile. This suggests that for the vast majority of these people, the main concern wasn't about morals or religion, it was about function. And for the people who actually stuck with it through the tough parts, the book documents a huge range of reported improvements. This table gives you a snapshot of the common before and after picture people described. Things like unreliable erections and brain fog reportedly improved. Social anxiety went down, and the desire for a real partner came back. But, and this is a big but, the source material is really clear that this is not some magic fix. Recovery is presented as a process, right, with lots of ups and downs, good days and bad days, as the brain slowly, gradually finds its way back to a new balance. And some of the life changes that users connected to this process are just staggering. The book is packed with these kinds of self-reports. People linking their reboot to huge turnarounds in their mental health, their careers, and their overall sense of well-being. Ultimately, the book frames this whole issue as just one really powerful case study of our ancient brains trying to navigate a supernormal digital world. And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. What other modern habits might be creating this same kind of mismatch?
And that's our brief explainer on the core arguments presented in Your Brain on Porn. As always, this is for educational purposes and not medical advice. We definitely encourage you to explore the source material for yourself.